The dawn broke blood-red over Storm's End, but Stannis Baratheon beheld it with flint-hard eyes that saw only duty. Upon the seaward ramparts, he stood alone, wind tugging at his cold dark cloak, while below him, the narrow harbor churned around 200 war galleys, drawn up like spearheads awaiting his word. Canvas crackled, rigging thrummed, and the banners bearing the crowned stag in a field of flame whipped toward the horizon. Word from his master of ships was clear. The final hogsheads of fresh water were lashed. The last crossbow stringed tar-wound tight. They were ready. Yet readiness was a brittle thing compared to resolve. And resolve had been beaten into Stannis the way a smith tempers steel, heated, hammered, cooled, and hammered again. He traced the crenellated stone beneath his gauntleted fingers, remembering bitter hours of his boyhood during the first siege, when Storm's End's people had gnawed on rats, while noble lords ate their carved roast within Robert's tent, beyond the walls. Storm's End had not fallen then, nor would King's Landing now stand, should he bring the same iron to bear. Footfalls approached. Lord Davos Seaworth, hood pushed back, gray strands rippling in the salt spray. Davos bowed, no courtly flourish. Only honest deference. "My king," he said, "the fleet waits on your command." "Then we sail," Stannis answered, voice as spare as a winter gust. "Before another tide turns." He did not speak of Renly's green banners now lowered in defeat, nor Melisandre's shadow that had stolen a brother's life. Those truths lived behind his eyes, carved deeper than words could reach. Davos watched his king stride away from the ramparts toward the stone steps, torchlight flaring in the recesses of the hall below. Stannis' shadow stretched long and jagged, as though trying to seize the whole keep in its grasp. Far to the north, black sails blossomed over the mouth of Massey's Hook, as the fleet slipped into open water. Davos' fury took her place astern of Lord Valyrian's pride of Driftmark, gulls wheeling overhead. Drums pounded out the stroke, and the oars bit the green waves. Gunners fed their deck-mounted scorpions iron-piercing quarrels 3 feet long, while sailors roped clay jars of lamp oil and powdered pitch near the forecastles. On the quarterdeck of the Fury, Davos felt the deck shiver beneath his boots with each pull of the oars. He wrapped his embroidered cloak tight, a gift from his king after Blackwater Bay in another life. Had fortune bent that path, but fate had pivoted. Now they would arrive before Tyrion Lannister could lace the river with wildfire. "Seven save us," Davos prayed. "Let no alchemist's jar impede us. Let no lion foresee what rides upon these waves." By noon the rolling stretch of Shipbreaker Bay lay astern. 27 Valyrian Ironbelly warships under Salator's son flanked the Baratheon vanguard. The Lysine pirate lord strutted upon his ornate stern castle hollering encouragement in 3 tongues. Yet when Davos glimpsed him through the spyglass, Salator's smile was half nerves, half anticipation. He had wagered treasure upon this venture, and the sea forgave no poor wagers. Below decks, men whispered of Melisandre. The Red Woman stood aft on Stannis' Stormbreaker, auburn hair unloosed, ruby at her throat pulsing like a slow heartbeat. She gazed eastward, lips moving in a soundless prayer to her god of flame. Once, Davos had feared she would be aboard. Yet Stannis had commanded her to remain at Dragonstone, to pray for victory, not to conjure sorcery upon the water. The Onion Knight exhaled. God's preferred men do men's work in their stead. King's Landing Sunday market smelled of hot bread, dung, and the fear of rumor. On the morning that the first raven arrived, Tyrion Lannister sat above the muddy bustle on the Tower of the Hand's balcony, sampling warm arbor red while Pycelle stammered through the tidings. 100 sails sighted at Duskendale. The Grey Maester wheezed. "Large ships, my lord. Baratheon colors." Tyrion's green-gold gaze narrowed. He dismissed Pycelle and swiveled to face Bronn, seated cross-legged on the marble balustrade cleaning dirt from beneath his nails with a dagger. "The bastards have cut days off their journey," Tyrion said. "Either they rode a favoring wind, or the gods themselves drew them by the hand." Bronn smirked. "Takes more'n gods to row 200 oars each. Looks like Stannis men rode their arses off." Tyrion suppressed a quiver of anger. His wildfire plan, barrels still being sealed in the alchemist's halls beneath the city, would not be ready for 3 more days. The chain forging at the foundries of Flea Bottom rattled day and night, Links the size of oxen's thighs cooled in urine vats, a cunning snare to close Blackwater Bay. And it too was days from completion. Send word to Cersei, he choked out. And Joffrey. Have every anvil shift double their work. I want the chain finished in 2 days, or the smiths will see their own molten iron poured down their throats. Bronn, find Sir Jacelyn Bywater. Recall every gold-cloaked deserter with promises of gold or the noose. We hold the gates, the walls, and the river, come what may. And your wildfire? Bronn asked. Tyrion gulped the rest of his wine, the liquid settling in his belly like lead. Pray the pyromancers are sober. High atop the Red Keep, Queen Cersei paced before the throne, skirts whispering like serpents in dry grass. Her young son sat upon the Iron Throne, swinging one leg impatiently. If Uncle Stannis comes, Joffrey said petulantly, I'll kill him myself. I want his head, and the Onion Knights too. I hear he stinks. Cersei's lips quirked. You will remain behind the Kingsguard, sweetling. Let the men bloody themselves. A king is a symbol. He must remain unsullied. Joffrey's pout deepened. Then bring me his head after. On a pike. I'll feed it to Cerilyn. Ben Sen. Cersei brushed a hand over her son's golden hair. Yet inside, unease coiled. Stannis before Blackwater meant no time to draw Renly's reachmen to their cause. Tywin marched from Harrenhal, but had not yet taken the river road. The city's stores would not sustain a long siege. Doubt flickered across the queen's pale green eyes. Outside, bells tolled as small folk scrambled to fill sacks with barley and salted pork. Bakers doubled prices. Whores fled south across the Blackwater rush. Septons preached that the Father would judge all sin. The air thickened with hungers, coin, flesh, fear. On the evening of the 5th day, the masts of the Baratheon fleet pierced the horizon like a forest of black spears. The sun dipped low, gilding each sail's edge in flame. Sailors on the Fury cheered, believing the gods proclaimed victory in that blazing crest. But Davos felt his heart stomp slow. Heavy drums. To reach the mud gate by first light meant rowing through the blackness, trusting moonlight and charts more than sight. And if the lions had sown traps in the river's mouth, he climbed to Stannis Stormbreaker that night under a cold, star-pocked sky. On the afterdeck, Stannis stood listening to the creak of timbers, hands clasped behind his back. When Davos spoke of caution, the king cut him off. I know what waits, Stannis said. Tyrion builds some deviltry below the city, yet we will strike before he sets it loose. We may sail into the dragonfire all the same, Davos warned. Stannis' jaw twitched. Robert would have laughed at danger. Renly would have feasted before it. I am not them. I will break it. And how? He turned then, eyes like chips of cold sapphire. When we land, you'll lead the advance at the king's gate. Davos swallowed. His sons joined him on this venture. Mathos would command the Black Betha. Merrick, the Lady, Maria. My sons. They sail with their king, Stannis said grimly. And so do you. Davos bowed in surrender. Night on Blackwater Bay lay slick and silent. 6 hours before dawn, the first Baratheon ships hugged the south bank beneath the dark cliffs of the Kingswood, avoiding the open channel where watchers might spy them. Longboats splashed down, muffled oars carrying rank after rank of soldiers toward the river mouth. Above, the Red Keep rose, its torches no larger than fireflies. Sir Imry Florent led the vanguard aboard the Fury, relishing the chance to claim the city before Lord Tywin or the Tyrells could relieve it. His men wore polished helms and new storm-brown cloaks that caught the moonlight in 100 tiny flashes. They rode in grim silence, save for the occasional hiss of rope or click of a shield rim. Yet the Lannisters had not slept. Atop the battlements of the city walls, archers watched dark water, eyes adjusting to each shifting shadow. Behind them, cauldrons of scalding oil bubbled, the smell drifting on the night breeze. On the western wall, Tyrion himself paced the rampart walk. His chain was unfinished, but pockets of wildfire had been ferried upriver in rowboats and anchored to submerged pylons near the mouth. Should flames find them, the harbor would bloom like a hellmouth. But such perfection required timing Tyrion could no longer afford. He held a torch, as if it were a judge's gavel. Out on the water, a Baratheon longboat scraped the stone pilings of a ferry landing. Davos' eldest, Mathos, leapt out sword drawn, slipping on river slime. He hauled himself up beside the first, startled dockman, blade at the man's throat before word could be cried. Behind him, a score of soldiers fanned down the quay, grappling hooks spinning through the dark like silent hail. A horn blared from the walls, a single harsh cry. Then, arrows rained. The night exploded with shouts, the clang of iron on stone, the groan of wounded men. Tyrion snarled, "Loose the fire ships. Do it now, Bender." But the pyromancer Halin hesitated. "My lord, they are not all. Now, damn you." Up the river, concealed barges were set aflame and pushed adrift, their holds laden with clay jars bound in straw, each jar packed with wildfire. Sickly green tongues licked skyward, reflecting in Tyrion's wide eyes. The heat kissed his cheeks as though from an opening furnace door. Below, Davos saw the emerald flicker blooming along the current. "Back!" he roared. Oars churned water white as the Fury tried to tack. But the tide drew her prow toward the luminous slick. Davos glimpsed strange shapes swirling beneath the surface, the wildfire's shadows dancing like drowned wraiths. A jar cracked against a prow. One spark, then a roar like a dragon's birth. Flame enveloped 3 longboats at once, men screaming as green fire clung to mail and flesh alike. The smell of roasted pine tar filled the air. Mathos' cry cut through the blaze as Lady Maria burst apart, her mast spiraling skyward and plunging back in sparks. Davos' throat constricted. He could do nothing but watch. The Fury cut hard starboard, oars shattering in their locks. But wave wash hurled her sideways against a burning wreck. Soldiers pitched overboard, their armor glowing cherry red beneath liquid flame. Yet the gods answered. A sea breeze kicked up from the channel's heart, fanning the wildfire back upon itself, steering the worst of the inferno toward the northern bank. Torches flickered along the city wall as guards ducked beneath heat waves. The wrought iron gate of the King's Landing water postern glowed dull orange. Stannis seized the moment. "Land the storm ladders," he boomed, voice carrying across drifting smoke. Trumpets answered. From 40 remaining galleys, lines of soldiers poured ashore, shields locked over their heads against falling arrows. They splashed through knee-deep water, boots sinking in river silt. As they formed ranks, thunderous roars echoed from within the walls, Lannister trebuchets launching casks of pitch that arched over the parapets and burst in crimson showers. But the Baratheon men pressed on. Sir Imry's banner led the charge toward the mudgate, twin rams fashioned to resemble stag antlers lowered like tusks. Timbers slammed the wooden gatehouse in rhythmic booms. From within, panicked gold cloaks tried to brace the gate with grain wagons overturned as barricades. Tyrion rushed down the battlements, cursing. "I need men at the gate, Halin. More wildfire to the gatehouse." But supplies were spent, and men flinched at the thought of hauling cracking jars while fire raged on the river. Desperation painted the Lannister lines pale. Cersei sealed herself within Maegor's holdfast, rosary of 7-pointed stars wrapped tight about her wrist. She listened to the distant thunder, rams striking gates, men's voices fading, a city's heart beginning to stutter. She thought of Tywin somewhere on the river road, too far now, and of a prophecy whispered by a fortune-teller long ago. "When your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat." Outside her window, the wildfire pyre reflected ghostly green on Blackwater's surface, as if a second moon had fallen broken and wrathful into the river. At dawn the mudgate splintered. Baratheon soldiers flooded the fish market, their boots sloshing through blood and sewage. Stannis dismounted amid them, greatsword Lightbringer unsheathed. A blade that glowed faint red whenever contact with flesh set the rubies in its pommel alight. He cut a path up the sloping street of flour, Davos at his side with a borrowed shield, pausing only to order fresh detachments to hold each junction seized. King's Landing sprawled like a wounded beast, alleys twisting into courts, courts into plazas, all alive with screams. Some small folk cheered Stannis men, tearing down lion banners and waving crusts of bread. Others pelted soldiers with chamber pots and stones. Davos' eyes stung with the smoke of burning warehouses near the riverfront and the acrid side reek of wildfire, still simmering in pockets. Lime green wisps clung to timber like poison ivy. They reached Cobbler's Square, where the first true resistance gathered. Sir Mandon Moore and half the King's Guard rallying 400 gold cloaks behind an overturned bread cart. The clash rang like church bells. Stannis drove forward, shield raised, Lightbringer shearing Moore's white enameled helm. Sparks flew crimson on dawn's blue. Tyrion arrived then, visor stained with soot, half of his chainmail shirt drenched in sweat. He spied Stannis across the milling chaos. Flame in one hand, steel in the other, and felt a tremor of awe. Here was a man carved of iron, marching inexorable as a battering ram. Bar the street. Tyrion screamed. He scrambled onto a wine cask and swung his axe down on the rope, securing a bundle of burning canvas. The bundle toppled, spilling smoking coals into oil spread across paving stones, erupting into a trench of fire that momentarily separated the combatants. The flames bought him moments, not minutes. He motioned to Sir Balon Swan.I. "Hold them while I fetch the queen. If the city must fall, she must not." Swan nodded, but doubt clouded his eyes. On the heights of Aegon's high hill, the Red Keep still stood an unbreached redoubt behind walls 30 feet thick, yet its courtyards buzzed with dread. Refugees from Fleabottom hammered at the iron gate, only to be refused. Within, Maegor's holdfast. Septis murmured prayers with whispered terror. Sansa Stark knelt by a narrow window in her bedchamber, watching black smoke coil upward. Somewhere behind those fumes, her dream of chivalric rescue flared and died. She remembered Sandor Clegane's warning. Kings are like wolves. They will bite when frightened, and lions bite harder than most. Outside her door, 2 gold-capped spears crossed barring passage. But Sansa gripped a hairpin, fine steel, smooth to the touch, and considered that if death came, she would face it standing, not kneeling. The battle at Cobbler's Square turned when Davos' second son Merrick led a flanking force through a tannery alley to strike the gold cloak rear. Sir Mandon Moore fell beneath a rain of stag antler sigils, and the Lannister line buckled. Tyrion leapt from the cask, parried a staghorn axe, and took a glancing blow that split his mail across one shoulder. His vision flashed white, yet he forced himself to stand. He glimpsed Stannis pushing forward step by relentless step, Lightbringer sweeping. The heat of the blade burned red where it met flesh. Stannis seemed tireless, a war engine bound by sinew and bone. "Defend the King's Gate," Tyrion gasped, grabbing Bywater by the collar. "Delay them within the Baelor's sept circle if you can. I must reach the keep." Bywater saluted with grim resignation. Tyrion ran. Gale. Past the Gate of the Gods, the Baratheon soldiers found the gardens overgrown and silent. They marched beneath the pale stone faces of maiden, warrior, smith, father, statues keeping monstrous vigil, and edged closer to the memory of Targaryen kings who had once forged dominion in Dragonfire. Every step forward loosened the history that clung to those stones. Stannis called a halt at the base of Visenya's hill. The Red Keep dominated the skyline, sun rising behind its towers, painting them halo gold. But new defenses bristled. Groaned gripped bowstrings, kettle drums thrummed, and from behind murder holes, arrows darted like dragonflies. Davos rode up beside his king. "The bay's mouth is ours," he said, "but the keep will cost blood. All wars are paid in coin of men." Stannis replied, voice scraped raw. "I spend what I must." He gestured to Sir Gunser Sunglass. "Bring up the rams. We breach the Iron Gate before Tywin rides within my sight." Davos opened his mouth to speak of his son Mathos' death, charred beyond recognition beneath wildfire's kiss. But the words withered. Duty first, grief after. Deep within Maegor's holdfast, Queen Cersei clutched a small phial of dark liquid. Nightshade, the maester had called it. One swallow each for herself and Tommen, should the walls fall. Myrcella was safe in Dorne, a wisp of comfort. Tears welled, but anger dried them. She would not die weeping. Footsteps thudded. Sir Lancel staggered into the torchlit corridor, clutching a blood-soaked bandage at his waist. "My queen," he gasped. Baratheon men press the western postern. "Lord Tywin is days away, we cannot hold." Cersei's lips turned to stone. The hand's dwarfish brother had failed. The walls crumbled. She eyed the vial, then her son Joffrey cowering behind Sir Boros Blount. Coward, she thought, but he is my blood. Tell Sir Boros to carry the king to the Red Keep's deepest vault. She snapped. If they breach the keep, I will parley. Perhaps Sansa Stark can ransom her wolf brother's loyalty. Bender. Lancel nodded, swayed, and collapsed. Cersei's gown rustled as she swept over him. With surprising tenderness, she brushed hair from his clammy brow. Then, the tenderness fled. Taking the phial, she pressed it into his hand. "Drink," she whispered. "For the pain." Lancel obeyed, eyes glassy with devotion. His throat moved thrice. Then he sagged, breath slowing. Cersei inhaled. The cost had begun. Outside, the iron gate boomed under staghorn rams. Molten lead poured from machicolations, but Stannis men raised wicker shields soaked in brine, fending off silver streams. 2 hours pounding cracked hinges. The third hour tore them free. The gate shuddered open. A roar erupted like storm tide breaking upon cliffs. Tyrion reached the keep's outer ward as the first Baratheon surge poured across the moat bridge. He brandished his axe, gathered what remained of the city watch, barely 50 men, and steadied them with ridicule. "You think that's a tide?" he shouted, voice shrill. "Hold here and the tide turns. Fall back, and it drowns us all." Then, they rallied for him. Perhaps for coin, perhaps to spite the noble Horsens who had fled. Tyrion moved to the fore, but even he knew valor could not plug every gap. More men dashed past, helms dented, shields scorched. Peasants streamed in their wake, looting before the bodies cooled. Then a horn call pierced the city, long, low, echoing off every stone. Tyrion's head snapped toward the southern road. Dust plumes rose beyond the city's old walls. Riders, 1,002, charging banners of golden roses, swirling in morning breeze. The Tyrell host had arrived, sweeping north from Bitterbridge with Garland the gallant leading their van. At their head rode a giant stallion armored in steel blossoms, and upon its back, sword glittering, was Lord Mace Tyrell's eldest son, Sir Loras reborn in vengeance for Renly. Stannis watched them crest the ridge, face unreadable. He calculated distance, gradients, numbers. His lines were stretched inside the city, breaching but not yet securing. If the Tyrells pinched them between keep and gate, momentum would stagger. He turned to Davos. "Hold the square. I push forward. If I take the throne room first, the city will see me crowned before Tyrell steals our blood." Then Natranin. Lightbringer lifted, gleaming hungry red. Stannis charged up the ramp to the keep's outer ward, 20 knights close behind. Davos remained, sword drawn to face Tyrell spilling through Lion Gate. The vanguard of summer knights slammed into the Baratheon flank. Shields splintered, banners tangled. Green cloaks of Highgarden met stag brown in swirling tapestry. Davos parried a longsword, riposte piercing a young knight's gorget. Another rider reared past, lancing his horse's flank. Chaos reigned. But chaos is a ladder, Tyrion once mused. He saw opportunity. Racing behind Tyrell's riders, an army of Reachman archers marched, unprepared for melee. Tyrion rallied Bywater's few crossbowmen atop a bakery roof and rained quarrels upon them. Each bolt lodged in bright silk. Green turned abruptly crimson. Below, Davos men tightened shield walls, presenting pikes 2 ranks deep. The Tyrell horses balked at the bristling hedge. Riders were dragged from saddles. In that moment, a miraculous parity emerged. 2 mangled forces locked, gasping. Inside the Red Keep, Stannis fought beneath banners of red 3-headed dragons and whitewashed lion sigils. Corridors cloaked in torch smoke guided him toward the throne room. At his back strode Sir Richard Horpe and Sir Geard Morrigan, shields battered, mail spattered black. They gained the hall of 100 hearths. A dozen Lannister guards blocked the far arch. Stannis advanced. They quailed beneath Lightbringer's glow. He left 3 corpses and 2 maimed behind him, never slowing. A crash sounded from the throne room doors themselves. Someone had barred them. Stannis ordered axes. His knights swung, pine boards splintering. With each strike, echoes rippled down galleries once graced by Dragon King's courts. At last the doors caved, iron hinges shrieking. Stannis stepped through into vaulted gloom. Shafts of dust-laden sun pierced stained glass moons in the roof, etching rainbow rivers across the iron throne. Joffrey's boy king crown lay discarded on a velvet cushion. The room stood empty, save for 2 petrified Kingsguard kneeling before the throne, their swords crossed in token of refusal. Stannis halted. The silence wrapped him. He tasted destiny in the air. Iron, old blood, burning pitch. Lightbringer's ruddy glow painted the throne's twisted blades crimson. He ascended the dais, each footstep striking like war drums. The Kingsguard did not move, perhaps ordered to hold until death, perhaps paralyzed by the measure of his will. Stannis sat. Cold metal points pressed through his mailed hauberk. He gripped the armrests. They felt alive beneath his palms, as though ghosts of conquests whispered within. For a moment, only the howl of wind through broken high windows answered him, as if Westeros itself drew breath. Outside, the battle hammered on, ignorant that a king had taken seat again. Tyrion staggered through the smoky haze of Baelor's Sept Square when a riderless horse barreled past, entrails dragging. He saw by its crest a Tyrell steed, and hope flickered. The Reachmen were losing momentum in the cramped streets. Then trumpets sounded from the keep. 3 sharp blasts that carried above the din. All eyes turned. Upon the ramparts of the Red Keep, a stag banner unfurled. Black-crowned stag on gold field, sigil of House Baratheon. Some Lannister men sagged, others screamed denial. Summer nights froze as though winter's breath touched them. Tyrion's knees weakened. "7 save us," he whispered. "He's taken the throne." He grasped a nearby gold-cloaked commander. "Order the retreat. Form ranks at the Sept of Baelor. We will bargain." The commander spat blood. Bargain with who? The city is his. But was it? Tyrion peered across the city to the river. Wildfire still burned in pockets. A dozen Baratheon ships sank half-scuttled. Tyrell banners clashed near the fish market. The balance teetered. He felt a tug at his sleeve. Podrick Payne, narrow-eyed squire, thrust a horn toward him. "My lord the chain, Bundry's near the mud gate." "The last link is ready." Tyrion blinked. His chain, his lock to seal the bay. But wildfire was consumed. It was a weapon waiting only for a sword to swing it. If Stannis now controlled the waterfront, the chain could trap Tyrell ships outside, starving them of succor. Victory hinged on what banner flew over the foundry. He wheeled on Pod. "Find Sir Jacelyn. Tell him to seal the river." Now. Pod vanished. Tyrion turned to face the surging press once more, axe heavy. The fate of kings sometimes rested on links of iron no thicker than a wrist. In the throne room, Ser Balon Swan limped through the shattered doorway. Helm dangling in one hand. Blood streaked his cheek. His white cloak was half burned. He halted at sight of Stannis, seated like an iron statue come to life. The new king's eyes fixed on him. Unyielding. Remote. Swan knelt. "The city yet fights, your grace. Queen Cersei remains in the holdfast with the king's heir, Tommen. She would parley." Stannis' lip curled, unreadable. There are no heirs while false kings sit. Yet something in the name Tommen stirred a shadow of mercy. Stannis respected law above all. Innocent blood weighed chiefly on him, as Davos once reminded. "Bring the boy to me," he said. "And the queen. They will bend the knee, or justice shall cut them down." Swan bowed, rose on unsteady legs, and backed away. Stannis turned his gaze to the hall's high arches. Light slanted on his crownless brow, drawing harsh lines. He knew his war was not yet done. The lion still twitched in its death throes, and the flower's thorns pricked at his heel. But he had taken the seat, blood had been spilled. The realm would bend. Eventually. He raised Lightbringer, point braced upon the stone floor, and closed his hand round the hilt. Beneath gauntleted fingers, warmth pulsed. Some would call it magic. Stannis called it purpose. Outside, drums still beat, swords still rang, and ravens already took wing. South to Highgarden, north to River Run, east to Dragonstone, carrying the same simple truth. A new king sits the Iron Throne, and only fire and shadow can unseat him now. A hush settled over the throne room like cloth, draped upon a corpse, muffling footfalls, swallowing the clang of distant battle beyond the walls. Stannis Baratheon sat unmoving upon the Iron Throne, the chill of forged swords biting through his mail, yet he made no move to shift his weight. The room's only illumination came from the cracked dome above, where morning sunlight broke into pallid shafts, as if reluctant to touch the carnage that had ushered this new king to power. Dust motes drifted in the pale beams, dancing like spectral embers. Below the dais, the Kingsguard held their kneel. Sir Preston Greenfield and Sir Boros Blount bowed so low their white cloaks pooled around them in sullied folds. Stannis' eyes studied them as one examines blunt tools. They had sworn vows to protect the royal line, and yet surrendered their charge without a drop of resistance the instant a harder would presented itself. Inwardly, he judged them wanting. Outwardly, he offered neither praise nor condemnation. The silence served as punishment enough. At length, Davos Seaworth strode through the shattered doorway, helm tucked beneath one arm, his hair damp with sweat and soot. He halted halfway down the throne room's great bronze and oak runner, boots leaving prints of ash on bright mosaic tiles. The Onion Knight's face bore lines deeper than mere exhaustion could carve. Fresh grief lay etched across his brow, the hollow of his cheeks. Stannis understood without asking. One glance told him which son had not returned from the river. Within the king's stern breast, a muscle twitched, small as a heartbeat, buried beneath plate and purpose. But it was more than he would have allowed any other man to witness. Davos bowed. "My king?" he said, voice rough. "The Tyrell van still presses against our left beyond the fish market. Sir Gunser believes they will regroup and strike at the Dragon Gate next. But the bay is ours. The chain has been raised. No more enemy ships can enter or flee." Stannis inclined his head once. "And Lannister resistance?" "Fractured. Many yielded when the stag flew over the Red Keep. Yet pockets remain in the western wards. Sir Rolland has men sweeping street by street." "Then?" Stannis' gauntlet dropped to rest on the hilt of Lightbringer upright beside the throne. The blade's faint crimson glow had dulled in the cool air, smoldering rather than blazing, but every flicker cast rosy flashes across the iron blades that surrounded him. It looked almost like the weapon breathed, an illusion born of reflection, some would claim. Others, Melisandre among them, would call it proof of divinity. Stannis called it a distraction. "Bring me the boy," he said. "And his mother." Davos swallowed. "The Queen Regent seals herself in Maegor's holdfast with Tommen and the remaining Kingsguard. She demands safe conduct for herself and her son to Casterly Rock." Stannis' stare hardened. "Tommen is innocent. The mother is not. She will kneel and confess her treason publicly or face judgment. Go to Maester Pylos, have him draft terms. She relinquishes the boy into my custody, renounces all claim to regency, and stands trial. Only then will I show her mercy." Davos bowed lower, but hesitation lingered. "Your Grace, the Tyrells fight still. If they learn Lord Tywin fell upon their host at the Manor, they may falter. But if the Queen dies, they might redouble to avenge her. War with both Reach and Westerlands could bleed the realm." Stannis' jaw flexed. "I do not barter justice because men fear war. The law is the law." He paused, then added, softer, "Yet I would spare the innocent. Draft the terms. Offer sanctuary in the Sept to any who lay down arms." Davos straightened. "As you command." Left alone with the kneeling knights, Stannis turned his gaze outward, beyond walls and smoke, as if reading the weft of fate stitched into the horizon. Victory had been wrestled from twin maws, wildfire and winter roses. Yet it was unseasoned, its edges still raw. He had climbed to the summit only to find other peaks looming beyond. But peaks could be scaled in time. Iron will and righteous law had carried him thus far and would carry him farther. The crown would come later. He could feel its phantom weight already, but first he must gird the kingdom to accept the master less glamorous than Robert, less beloved than Renly, yet truer than either. A footstep behind. Ser Geard Morrigan entered, face streaked with smoke. "My king," the lords declarant gather in the queen's ballroom. Florent, Estermont, Valerian. "They await your word." Stannis rose. The Kingsguard lifted their bowed heads only a fraction, uncertain. He descended the dais with measured tread, Lightbringer clicking against stone. Passing the kneelers, he spoke low. "Do your duty." They bowed again. Relief and dread mingled. The Queen's ballroom had once hosted the feast celebrating Prince Joffrey's 12th name day. Silk banners of crimson and gold still framed gallery railings, though many were smeared with smoke and char. Now burnished helms replaced lace masks. Lords stood clustered in terse exchanges over hastily drawn maps pinned beneath daggers on the musician's dais. Candlelight flickered off gilt columns, turning anxious faces waxen. Stannis entered, flanked by Ser Geard and Lord Valerian, and conversation died like a snuffed taper. All present dipped heads. They saw not merely a claimant, but a conqueror. No herald proclaimed him. No coronet glittered, yet the Iron Throne's decision lay written in soot upon his pauldron, and dried blood along Lightbringer's fuller. Sir Imry Florent cleared his throat. "Your Grace, word comes from scouts. The Tyrell main host encamps 2 leagues south along the Roserad. Their riders test our lines even now. They outnumber us thrice with fresh levies." Lord Ardrian Celtigar scoffed. "Numbers matter less in these alleys. We hold the walls, the river, and the chain. They cannot starve us while the granaries of King's Landing are full. They can burn them," Lord Estermont countered, "or poison the wells. And Old Town sellswords may swell their ranks." Stannis raised a mailed hand. The room fell silent. The Tyrell host marches not for revenge of Renly alone. They march expecting to join my brother and seat themselves at council tables. Instead, they found his killer seated on the throne. Half their courage died the moment my banner rose. I will send riders under truce to invite them to yield, to pledge fealty, and keep their lands. If they refuse, they will learn a new king's justice. Now when murmurs rustled. House Florent eyed each other, knowing ties of blood to both Reach and Stormlands ran tangled as ivy. Stannis' gaze lingered on Sir Imry, uncle by marriage. Yet loyalty had wavered before and could again. "Sir Imry," Stannis said, "you will carry my terms. Take Davos as envoy. His honesty is known." Sir Imry's lips thinned, but he bowed. "As you will, your grace. Make ready within the hour," Stannis ordered. "Valerian fleets shall guard the river mouth. I want patrols doubled. No messenger enters or leaves without my seal." He dismissed them. Lords bowed and dispersed, their retinues scattering like startled pheasants. In their wake, the ballroom's hush returned, broken only by distant siege engines grinding into new positions. Stannis turned to Ser Geard. "Find the High Septon. He will anoint me before nightfall." Geard hesitated. "Your Grace." The sept burned along the western nave when a cask of pitch burst. The High Septon fled to a crypt beneath the hill of Rhaenys. "We can fetch him, but ceremony may." Stannis' brows knit. "The realm must see lawful order restored. Have him cleansed, robed, and brought. I will not reign a day unblessed. Let the bells ring when the oil touches my brow." Geard bowed and left. Stannis exhaled through flared nostrils. A small matter, yet necessary. The people remembered their father's kneeling when Aerys died and Robert donned a new crown. They would kneel again, and memory would link the axe, forging legitimacy stronger than steel. Across the city, Tyrion Lannister limped through the smoky entrance of the Red Keep's stable yard, supported by Podrick Payne's slender shoulder. His left arm hung useless. A pike thrust had pierced above the elbow, gouging muscle. Every breath whistled through cracked ribs. Men still fought in snatches of courtyard, but most lion banners had been lowered in silent surrender. They slipped behind a charred hay cart where Sir Bronn crouched, wiping a bloodied sword on the cloak of a dead Reach squire. Bronn's eyes gleamed at sight of Tyrion. "Alive, are we? Thought they'd mount your head on a spike by now." "Damn. It lacks novelty," Tyrion rasped. "Father collected spikes enough in King's Road." He sagged onto an overturned bucket, grimacing. "Stannis sits the throne. How much longer before he notices the dwarf who cursed him from the parapets?" Bronn shrugged. "We can still slip out the Godswood postern at the foot of Visenya's hill. Chains up, but rowboats hug the bank. Rivers quieter than the streets." Tyrion looked toward the main keep, where smoke drifted in tired plumes. Somewhere deeper, his sister plotted desperation. He considered loyalty, and what slender coin it purchased these days. "I leave and my sister seals her doom," Tyrion murmured. "Stay, and I share it." A clever man would leave, survive to scheme another day. "Clever man indeed," Bronn said. "Yet a stupid one," Tyrion continued. "Might remain to barter sister and nephew for something still more valuable." Bronn cocked an eyebrow. "Your life? My life, my lands. Perhaps Casterly Rock itself, once father sees how neatly I preserved their lineage." Tyrion smiled thinly. "Cersei is cornered. Tommen her last card. Suppose I deliver him into Stannis' hands safely, pledge obedience, and pledge that the Westerlands will not rise. Father could leverage that to bargain for autonomy." "Now, the Queen won't yield the boy," Bronn said. "She will, if given the right persuasion. I know her secrets, Bronn. Enough to render her compliant." Tyrion stood with effort. "Come. Time is the only coin that devalues faster than honor. We must reach Maegor's holdfast." Bronn eyed the stable gate. "Your head's a fine bounty, but your purse is finer." He sheathed his blade and followed. Maegor's holdfast soared from the inner bailey like a dark fist, walls smooth as river stones, gates of black iron thrice reinforced. Inside, Queen Cersei paced the high chamber of the Tower of the Hand she had commandeered as refuge. Her crimson gown was torn at the hem, her hair disheveled. Little Tommen huddled on a velvet chaise, clutching Sir Pounce to his chest, eyes round with terror. Sir Boros Blount and Sir Osmond Kettleblack stood guard. The rest of the King's Guard lay dead or captive. Cersei's heart hammered. She had watched the stag banner rise. She had drunk half a flagon of Arbor Gold, and smashed the rest against the marble floor when Sir Lancel's death was brought to her. Now dread crept like frost along her veins. Another hour, perhaps two, and they would batter down the second door. A rap echoed. Urgent, measured. Sir Boros opened a slit. Her brother's mismatched eyes peered through. Cersei admitted him and Bronn, sneering at the sellsword's presence. "Tyrion," she hissed. "You dare crawl here after failing us?" "I crawl, dear sister, to save what remains," Tyrion said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Stannis offers clemency to Tommen, merely asks your submission." Cersei laughed, a brittle glassy sound. "Submission? He'll burn me and parade the boy in chains." "Unlikely. He needs the realm to accept him. Executing an innocent child thwarts that." Tyrion drew closer, lowered his voice. "Our father rides north, yet his path is hindered by river lords. He cannot relieve us. Your only hope is negotiation." She poured wine into a crystal chalice, hand trembling. "Negotiate? With the man who murdered Renly? Who burned my fleet?" "Renly died of shadow," Tyrion said. "Politics kill in stranger hues than any sword. Listen. Cersei, we can choose the manner of our defeat or let it choose for us. Bend, and you remain alive to plot vengeance. Resist, and you join Lancel's corpse beneath a sheet." Cersei's gaze faltered at Lancel's name. Her fingernail traced the lip of the goblet until a thin line of blood welled. When she spoke again, voice shivered. What would he demand? The boy as ward and hostage. The Iron Throne is his. Your regency ended. You would be confined, likely to Casterly Rock, under oath of peace. She paced, wine splashing onto the rug. A gilded cage is still a cage. Tyrion stepped between her and Tommen. The boy's lower lip quivered. Better a cage than a grave, sweet sister. He knelt before Tommen, forced a gentler tone. Can you be brave a little longer? You'll ride to Dragonstone perhaps, learn to command fleets, eat fish until you sprout gills. Tommen sniffled. Will mother come? Soon, Tyrion lied. Cersei's eyes glistened. She gulped the wine, wiped her mouth. Very well. I will parley on the ramparts. Boros will accompany us. If I see archers primed, I throw myself and my son from the wall. Bronn chuckled. I've seen worse exits. Cersei glared but acquiesced. She smoothed her dress, dabbed at smudges on Tommen's cheeks. Fetch me a cloak of crimson silk. She told a handmaiden trembling in the corner. If I bend my knee, the realm will remember a queen, not a beggar. Tyrion offered his arm. Together, with Tommen between, they descended the spiraling stair. On the battlements overlooking the dry moat that flanked the inner ward, Stannis awaited. He wore no crown yet, only a plain bronze circlet Davos had fetched among Robert's relics. It sat heavy on his brow, almost humbling. By his side stood Maester Pylos holding a parchment with wax seal unbroken. Knights bearing stag banners lined the wall walk, crossbows slung but bolts notched askew. Ready but not eager. A portcullis creaked as Cersei emerged upon the opposite parapet, wind tugging a crimson cloak that rippled like spilled blood. She gripped Tommen's shoulder fiercely. The boy looked small next to her rigid form. Tyrion hovered back, hands raised as if surrendering to fate. Stannis raised a hand. Heralds sounded horns. 3 notes only. Silence fell over courtyard and rampart, broken by distant clang of steel, where battle still flared at outer wards. Cersei Lannister? Stannis called, voice harsh but steady, carrying across the gap. You stand accused of treason against the rightful king. Myself, through murder of King Robert, enthronement of false heirs, and waging war upon the realm. I offer terms that justice may be tempered with mercy. Cersei's smile was dagger thin. Mercy? For which crime? The sin of birthing sons stronger than yours. Stannis' expression did not change. My patience bows to the law. Surrender the boy, renounce your claim, and submit to trial. I pledge his safety, your confinement, and leave to right your kin in Casterly Rock. Mentorama. She stroked Tommen's hair, eyes gleaming. And if I refuse, then your refusal becomes your confession. The sword will answer for the court. Stannis drawled the words like stone grinding stone. Cersei looked down at her son. Tears welled. She blinked them away. Turn your head, sweetling. Tommen obeyed. Cersei's gaze lifted to meet Stannis across space, charged with decades of feuds and rivers of blood. Do you swear, on honor you pretend to hold, that no harm will come? I swear by the Seven, by the flames of Aralor, and by my own name. Cersei hesitated a heartbeat longer, then kissed Tommen's brow. She guided him forward until he stood at the parapet's edge. Go, she whispered, voice cracking. Tommen took 3 hesitant steps across the stone bridging plank laid between the walls. A narrow plank placed by Davos moments before. Stannis motioned. Sergiard moved forward, arms out wide. Halfway across, Tommen looked back. His mother's eyes shimmered. Mother, be strong. She croaked. He reached the other side. Sergiard guided him behind Stannis' line. The king placed a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. Tommen flinched but did not cry. Cersei's spine seemed to fold then, like a stave bowed across a too-strained string. She sank to her knees, cloak pooling, hands clasped not in prayer but fury. Tyrion exhaled sharply, relief mingling with dread at what would follow. Stannis nodded to Maester Pylos. The maester unfurled the parchment, reading for the assembled watchers. Cersei Lannister's voluntary surrender. Abdication of regency. Guarantee of safety. Braavos affixed his signature as witness. Cersei offered none. Her nod sufficed. Escort the Queen Regent to secure lodgings. Stannis waved. Knights approached across the plank. Cerberus clenched sword, but Tyrion barked to stand down. Cersei allowed herself to be lifted, head held high, chin tremulous. She disappeared behind the line of shields. When she was gone, Stannis turned to Tommen, knelt so their eyes aligned. The boy's pupils brimmed. Stannis studied the child. Soft, fearful, unready for burdens he never asked for. "You will be treated with honor," Stannis said quietly. "Fed, clothed, taught letters and law. One day you may command Storm's End garrison if you prove worthy." Tommen swallowed. "Will I see Mother?" "In time." A tear escaped Tommen's lashes. Slid down cheek. He did not wipe it. Stannis stood. Signaled a sworn shield to escort the child to chambers previously prepared. A bedroom overlooking the sea, far from the dungeons where traitors languished. By dusk, bells of the great sept tolled. First for the coronation oil poured upon Stannis' brow by a trembling high septon. Second for prayer of thanksgiving that the slaughter had ceased. Then a third peal, for the dead, whose numbers swelled beyond count. All across King's Landing, smoke from pyres veiled the setting sun. Streets once teeming with gossip now teemed with carts bearing bodies. Soldiers, small folk, reached knights who had perished in alleys. Baratheon men felled by lion blades. Mothers wailed. Bakers shoveled ashes. Whores offered solace to victors and vanquished alike, coin and grief mixing in corners. In the siege lines south of the city, the Tyrell camp received Stannis' summons. Lord Garland Tyrell convened a council beneath a striped pavilion. Bright courtiers, battered captains, fledgling knights who still smelled of rosewater. News that Cersei and Tommen were captive struck like a frost wind across midsummer fields. Their cause, first vengeance for Renly, then alliance with Joffrey, had lost its head and heart in one stroke. Scouts reported Lannister banners retreating across the Mander Valley. Tywin yet days away. Garland's knuckles whitened around his sword belt. Brother Loras drives the vanguard. He will not abandon the city's liberation. Lord Mathis Rowan, older and less burdened by pride, shook his head. Liberation has fled. The usurper sits the throne. Boy king seized, queen arrested. To breach those walls now is to become rebels ourselves. He spoke of lines of supply from Highgarden, of harvest threatened by Westerland raiders, of the faith of small folk who believed victory gift of the gods. Piece by piece, the reality of their position mounted a scaffold in Garland's mind. He realized he held the rope. That night, Raven Wings beat south bearing Stannis terms. Lay down arms, swear fealty, retain your lands and privileges, reject, and be traitors. The parchment bore the seal of a crowned stag encircled by fire. The ink beneath glistened wet. The next morning, Braavos and Sir Imry rode under truce to the Tyrell line. A sun hazed behind wildfire smoke tinted the sky sea green. Grass lay trampled by hooves and cratered by scorpion bolts. Braavos' stallion picked careful steps among churned mud. At a white pavilion embroidered with blossoming vines, they dismounted. Lord Garland emerged with Loras at his side, armor polished, surcoat torn. Loras's eyes burned with grief yet restrained. They greeted with stiff bows. Braavos spoke first, voice hoarse. "Lord Stannis offers you seat on his council, freedom of faith, pardons for those under your banners." Loras's fingers flexed on sword hilt. "Pardons for my brother's murderer?" Braavos met his gaze. "Renly died by sorcery, yes. My king regrets the deed yet holds it lawful, under powers of his god." He swallowed, tasting ashes. "Yet he will not deny you grief. Serve the realm now." Serve the realm now. Spare thousands yet to die. Garland lifted a hand to still Loras. We must weigh the good of Highgarden. The Reach feeds half the kingdoms. War may starve millions. He looked to Davos. We ask safe conduct to speak before the new king. Davos inclined his head. You shall have it. Loras's rage sputtered at brother's calm, but he acquiesced. The Tyrell council dispersed to prepare. Davos and Imri remounted, returning through lines where uneasy soldiers watched allies become guests. 3 days later, a procession wound through the ash-swept streets of King's Landing. At its fore rode Stannis Baratheon beneath a freshly forged crown, a band of beaten steel crowned by points shaped like stag antlers. He wore black surcoat with fiery heart and stag sigil. Lightbringer rested across the pommel. Behind him walked the High Septon barefooted, chanting hymns. Then came Davos, cloak newly embroidered with a silver ship, Lord Valerian, Lord Estermont, Sir Imry Florent, Sir Geard Morrigan, and, amid them, Garland and Loras Tyrell unarmed, bearing offerings of bread and salt. Small folk lined the route uncertainly. They stared at the new crown with wary hope, at Davos with gratitude, and at the Tyrells with curiosity, for rumors of traitor and victim danced on many lips. Widow Hobbs shuffled forward, offering Stannis a crust of oat bread. He took a bite, solemn, and handed it back. Such gestures wove a tapestry of legitimacy among hearts quicker than decrees. They reached the steps of Baelor's Sept, scorched by recent flames. Stannis ascended, turned to face the crowd. Bells ceased. Hush billowed outward. He raised a hand. People of King's Landing, he declared, voice carrying. I stand before you not as conqueror but as servant of law. My brother Robert named me rightful heir. The lords of the Stormlands have answered his call. Justice guided my sword, duty now guides my rule. He gestured to the Tyrell brothers. These knights of the Reach sought to avenge their kin. I hold no malice for honorable grief. They have chosen peace. So long as they hold to oaths sworn today, Highgarden shall flourish. Murmurs spread. Some doubtful, some approving. My reign begins, Stannis continued, with mending torn cloth. Taxes levied under Lannister misrule are suspended for 1 moon's turn. Bread from royal granaries will be given freely until winter's first frost. And he paused. The king's peace shall reach into every alley. Those who prey on the weak, gold cloak or sellsword, will answer to the crown. Island. Across the square, Davos glimpsed smiling faces among ragged lines. Hope sprouted in barren ground. Let all know, Stannis finished, that the realm's laws return this day. Obey, and you will find justice fair and swift. Defy, and you will face the same. He lowered his hand. Bells tolled anew, this time not knell but proclamation. Loras bowed stiffly. Garland offered nod of respect. The crowd dispersed slowly, like tide receding from a shore cleared of storm rack. That evening, in chambers overlooking the Blackwater where tar Blackwater reflected sparks of funeral pyres, Stannis convened his first council. Present, Davos as hand in all but name, Maester Pylos, Sir Imry Florent elevated to Master of Ships, Lord Valerian, and by new accord Lord Garland representing the Reach. Tyrion Lannister attended under guard, advisor on Westerland's affairs, bargaining his knowledge. Maps covered the table. Westeros sketched in ink dark as coagulated blood. Pylos moved stones carved as lions, stags, trout, krakens. News was grim. In the west, Sir Davin Lannister roused castles. In the north, Roose Bolton advanced on Winterfell, banners uncertain. Beyond the wall, wildling fires multiplied. To the east, dragons grew in Korth rumor. Stannis listened, jaw. And we will not overreach, he decided. Secure Crownlands first. Send ravens offering pardons to river lords. Davos, oversee grain shipments to villages starved by war. Florent, rebuild the royal fleet. Salvage what hulls you can. He turned to Tyrion. You will write to your father. Tell him his daughter lives, his grandson is safe, but justice demands recompense for crimes done to the crown. Let him keep his rock if he bends. Tyrion dipped his head. "As your grace commands." Stannis' gaze rested on Garland. "Your ships will return Highgarden's wounded. In return, the Reach will supply grain this winter. Break faith, and know I will come west myself." Garland met the steel-blue stare, nodded. "The Reach keeps its word." Davos watched, heart heavy with memory of sons burned, yet heartened by glimpses of fair rule. He prayed silently the king's stern mercy would knit a fractured realm before blood debts demanded too dear a price. Days lengthened into weeks. Blackwater's stench gradually lessened as currents carried wildfire residue downstream. Carpenters raised new roofs. Smiths forged new locks. Songs were sung in taverns. Some lion dirges, some stag triumphs. Children played at war, one side wearing crumflower mustaches as Davos beards. The pulse of city life, faint at first, quickened with each sunrise. Yet peace is a loom threaded with tension. Far north, ravens bore tidings of King Robb Stark falling at the Twins, betrayed by Freys and Boltons. The north howled vengeance, but bled leaders. In the west, Tywin Lannister entrenched at Golden Tooth, forging alliances with Ironborn renegades. Across the narrow sea, sails with black dragons spread toward Pentos. Every map line became a wound scabbed yet not healed. In the Red Keep's rookery, Stannis stood one dusk as Maester Pylos bound a message to a raven. He read it once more. To King Stannis Baratheon from Jon Snow, 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, warning of the White Walker's return. The letter's stark words seemed ghostly. Stannis inhaled coal-thick air, brows knitting. Law demanded he guard the realm. Prophecy murmured by Melisandre demanded he defend life itself. South needed grain and justice. North, a sword of flame. He sensed the old enemy of all men stirring beyond the storms of politics. Davos stepped forward. If the north falls, the south follows. Stannis nodded. Send provisions to Eastwatch. Order smiths to forge dragonglass arrowheads. I will ride north come spring. Dain. And the council? Davos asked. They rule in my stead. Under law. Davos accepted. I will speak your words. Sheathing Lightbringer. Stannis Baratheon turned from the rookery's high window. Sunset painted the bay crimson, as if still alight with wildfire. Yet in that glow, the king saw not ruin but ember, a spark to kindle the realm anew. Thus, summer's end found Westeros balancing upon the blade between war and restoration. A new monarch held court in a city scarred by fire. A once proud queen plotted revenge from her gilded prison. Lords weighed oaths against ambitions, and far in frozen darkness, whispers as old as night curled through icy pines. The game had shifted but not ceased. Dice were cast anew. Some still spinning. Some landed edgewise waiting for the faintest breath to tip them. And in Dragonstone's shadowed chambers, a priestess in red watched the flames, lips parted in silent hymns. For she knew the night was long and full of terrors, not yet glimpsed in mortal fires. On that truth hung every fragile hope forged from the ashes of Blackwater's green inferno. The moon dragged a silver veil across Blackwater Bay, its pale path broken by piers and the ribs of half-sunken ships. Lanterns flickered along the quay where the new king's laborers toiled through night hours, heaving scorched timbers from the water, chanting in rough Stormlander cadence to keep rhythm with the tide. Yet even the steady scrape of pulley chains could not drown the shrill cries of gulls that circled overhead, greedy for whatever floated still warm upon the waves. Inside the Red Keep's tallest tower, Davos Seaworth paused before an arched casement to watch those lights sway like tethered stars. Salt wind cooled sweat on his brow. The tang of burning pitch carried from funeral barges still adrift downstream. Memory pressed against his ribs. Mathos laughing on the Black Betha's deck as the oars caught first wind. Merrick's fierce grin when he tossed Davos the spare helm just before the charge. The night offered no mercy for fathers who survived their sons. Davos drew breath, straightened his doublet, and climbed the last spiral to the council chamber set beneath the rookery. The chamber had been purged of Lannister crimson. Freshly washed banners showed a crowned stag within a flaming heart, silver thread glinting in candlelight. Stannis Baratheon stood alone at the map table, gauntleted fist planted on reach-woven cloth depicting the Seven Kingdoms. Sweat darkened the collar of his plain black surcoat. Lightbringer lay across a stool, its faint ember glow dull to bruised coals after a day's sheathing. Braavos inclined his head. "Your Grace sent for me." Stannis' gaze did not lift from the map. "I sent you to learn when Lord Garland intends to kneel." "By dawn," Braavos answered. "He swears his oath before your crowned stag in the sept, with the High Septon presiding. His brother Loras will pay homage, though his sword remains at his hip." "It may remain there," Stannis said, voice scraped raw by long council hours. "So long as its point remains low? And the boy?" Tommen prays in the sept's undercroft. Maester Pylos reads him passages of the seven-pointed star. The child asks after Serpounce more than his mother. Braavos hesitated, then forced the words. "When shall Queen Cersei be tried?" Stannis' mouth flattened. "When the realm is ready to watch justice without riot. The trial will wait until Highgarden's banners fly beside mine, and the Riverlands send hostages. One spark could undo 2 weeks' labor." He tapped a finger on the Riverlands. "Praise hold the twins. Bolton claims Winterfell. A Stark girl in my custody might turn north to peace. But Lady Sansa hides grief behind courtesy." "The girl's heart bleeds still," Braavos said gently. "Let it bleed behind walls." Stannis replied. "She will be safe so long as her family keeps faith." Meanwhile, Tywin fortifies Golden Tooth. His ravens speak of Parlay, but steel clinks louder than ink. Stannis looked up then, eyes bleak as a winter dusk. "I need ships and coin, Onion Knight. My crown weighs iron heavy on an empty coffer's chest." Braavos stepped closer. "The narrow sea teems with Braavosi galleys. Many fear Lannister debt uncollected. Promise repayment. With interest, once Casterly mines reopen under royal command. Braavos lends to those who levy iron promise." He risked a weary smile. "And perhaps a king's hand raised from the flea-bottom gutter persuades them more than a gold-bred lord." Stannis studied him a breath. "Tomorrow you sail east. Take Salad Horsan and 3 of his fastest ships. Bring back a loan sealed by the Iron Bank's Black Seal, or bring back news they refuse. Either way I will know." Braavos' chest tightened. To leave now while sons lay wrapped in sailcloth waiting pyre flame. But duty, that old tyrant, claimed him again. He bowed. "As you command." "Go," Stannis said. "Rest 4 hours. Ride out with the tide." Braavos turned, boot heels whispering on rushes. Before he reached the door, Stannis' voice halted him. "Braavos." He faced his king. "I saw your boy fall," Stannis said, words grinding like millstones. "The green fire took him in a heartbeat. He did not scream." Braavos' throat sealed. He managed a nod so slight it might have been a breath. Then he walked away, silence echoing in his wake. 2 levels below, the Hall of Lamps glowed amber in midnight hush. Melisandre walked its length barefoot, hem of scarlet silk whispering across mosaic dragons. Each iron sconce she passed flared higher, as though her presence summoned breath from hidden forges within the walls. She stopped at an alcove facing east, toward Dragonstone, and laid a palm against cold stone. Behind her, footsteps, soft, careful. Lord Garland Tyrell appeared, tunic of dark green, embroidered with golden roses. Sword belted but gloved hand open away from hilt. "My lady," he murmured, voice pitched low to evade echo. "You asked for parley beyond the king's hearing." Melisandre turned. Ruby at her throat pulsed with a heart's slow beat. "I ask for obedience to the Lord of Light." Garland's brow furrowed. "We have given oaths. Our men lay down arms. What more?" "Oaths can be broken," Melisandre said. "Faith cannot." He stiffened. "The Reach keeps the 7 gods, as have our fathers." "The 7 are shadows," she whispered, eyes lambent. "The night gathers in the north, a night beyond mortal memory. Only Arlor's flame can hold it at bay. Kneel now, pledge yourself to the fire, and your people will bloom through winter's storm, refuse, and even rose roots will blacken beneath ice." Garland exhaled. "You would have me abandon my gods and my people's love? You mistake the reach, priestess. We respect your victory, but hearts are not conquered by swords." Melisandre smiled, slow and sad. "Hearts are conquered by truth. When darkness comes, they will remember the woman who warned them." She touched the ruby. Crimson sparks danced within. "Tell your brother, the Knight of Flowers must set aside green for red. Should he cross me, I will show him shadows deeper than any garden hedge." Garland's jaw tensed. He bowed stiffly and backed away, boots scuffing mosaic petals. When he disappeared into the corridor, Melisandre faced the dawn's direction again. A hint of pale rose tinged the sky beyond arching windows. "Soon," she breathed. "Very soon." At first light, the bells of Baelor's sept tolled thrice. Lannister guards dragged fragments of their lion banners into wagons bound for the furnaces. Candlemakers hammered wax into new effigies of the smith and warrior. Beggars lined cobbled approaches, hands outstretched for barley loaves flung from carts. Overhead, the sunrise bled crimson through wildfire haze, turning domes and spires to hammered copper. Inside the sept, perfumed incense masked the stench of smoke. Garland Tyrell knelt before Stannis at the steps of the altar, cloak draped neatly behind. Loras stood beside him, curls still shimmering though eyes shadowed with unshed grief. The High Septon droned rites of fealty, ancient words binding blood to crown. "I, Garland of House Tyrell, do pledge my sword, my seed, my service," he spoke. Voice clear, echoing beneath marble vaults. "Henceforth the fruits of Highgarden feed the king's table first, and its spears guard his roads." Loras echoed softer, gaze fixed on Lightbringer propped upon the altar itself. The blade seemed to smolder brighter as the vows concluded, as though warmed by new devotion. Stannis raised the stag-tined coronet above Garland's bowed head. "Rise, Lord Paramount of the Reach. Guard well the realm's harvest." Applause murmured through assembled lords. Yet one witness remained silent. Cersei Lannister, her golden hair restrained under a sheer veil, stood between two spearmen at the rear nave. She stared not at Stannis, but at the Tyrell brothers, contempt flashing like sunlight off steel. After the ceremony, as nobles dispersed, Cersei's escort led her toward the side aisle. Garland intercepted with a courteous nod. "My lady." She tilted her chin, voice honeyed poison. "Enjoy your new master's leash, Lord Garland." Renly would have gagged on such courtesy. Pain flickered in his gaze. He bowed stiffly and moved on. Tyrion Lannister's quill scratched across parchment in a chamber overlooking the godswood. "Concessions to prevent further bloodshed, etc." He paused, flexed aching fingers. Podrick stood by the hearth feeding cedar chips to a shy flame. "Pod," Tyrion said, voice weary. "What rhymes with ransom?" Pod blinked. "Handsome, lord." Tyrion snorted. "Tywin will appreciate that." He resumed writing. "The Westerlands will remit 800,000 golden dragons over 7 years in quarterly installments. In exchange, the Rock retains autonomy and mining rights. Queen Cersei to be confined at Casterly Rock until Tommen's 16th name day." Ink splattered at that sentence. Tyrion dabbed it with blotting sand. He wondered if his father would accept. Tywin prized legacy more than gold. Perhaps a living son's negotiation outweighed a dead daughter's defiance. A rap sounded. Bronn stepped in, new cloak of dun wool across one shoulder, stubble freshly trimmed. "Word from Flea Bottom," he said. "Gold cloaks broke up a riot. Bread shortage. People think the Reach grain may take moons to arrive." "It may," Tyrion sighed. "Stannis promises but cannot conjure wagons." "See to the stocks. Open the royal granaries again. Half rations if we must. Better mutters than knives." Bronn raised brow. "Thought we were guests, not stewards. Guests do not wish to be flayed." Tyrion answered, sealing the letter. "We keep the peace. We keep our heads." That evening, Davos boarded Saladhor's sea bitch at a refurbished wharf. Torches illuminated mercenary sailors, adjusting lateen sails. Salad Horsan, clad in violet silk and too many rings, greeted Davos with theatrical bow. "Lord Hand without title," he said, twirling mustache points. "We chase Braavosi coin, yes? I prefer chasing Myrish maidens, costs less steel." "Braavos pays interest," Davos replied, stepping aboard. "Maidens spend it." Saladhor laughed. "You speak like pirate now." He lifted a wineskin. "To sons gone and gold to come." Davos drank. Bitter grape, burning throat. He glanced at Dragonstone receding behind haze. Above, the red comet of past years was long gone. But memory of its fiery tail lingered. Perhaps another sign would blaze before war's end. He prayed it was not green. When the sea bitch cleared the mouth of Blackwater that night, a wolf wind howled down from the north, snapping sails taut. Davos stood at prow, watching stars glitter on wine-dark sea. Somewhere beyond that horizon lay Braavos, and beyond Braavos winter, and beyond winter darkness. He touched the carved mother-of-pearl fingerbones pouch at his neck. First gift from his wife when he lost half a hand for smuggling onions into Storm's End. One bone missing now, the ring finger he had buried with Mathos. The pouch felt lighter, as did his heart, though sorrow still pooled deep. He whispered a prayer to the mother for the living, and to the stranger for the dead, and to any god who would listen for the king who bore the realm's weight alone. In the Red Keep's library, Melisandre glided between dusty shelves until she found a narrow door of black oak. Beyond lay a forgotten stair spiraling into the bowels of the keep, old as Egon's conquest. She descended, bare feet silent on cold stone, ruby casting blood-colored glow on walls, sweat slick with deep earth damp. At the stair's end, a cavernous vault opened. The ancient dragon forge where Valyrian smiths once labored. Coal braziers cold for decades stood like hollowed hearts, yet as Melisandre approached, embers stirred within, coaxed by unseen breath. She knelt before a cracked anvil and laid palms flat upon its pitted surface. "Show me," she whispered. Heat blossomed under her skin. Sparks hissed, flaring orange then white until vision swam crimson. In the molten glow, she saw a snow-laden field, dead men rising with eyes of frost, a boy king atop a wall of ice raising a flaming sword, not of steel, but crystal, shadows swirling behind him in shapes of winged beasts reborn. She gasped. The flames whirled into an image of Stannis crowned, his sword blazing like a miniature sun, standing amid broken sigils of wolf and lion and kraken. Then darkness quenched the flame. Melisandre's eyes snapped open. Sweat beaded her brow, though the forge remained cold. "Azor Ahai," she breathed. "Or another?" She rose, cloak whispering. Above, the king set laws and councils, but deeper fires told tales no crown could foresee. She traced a thumb across the ruby, pulse quickened, flames swirling again within. "The night gathers," she murmured. "I must not falter." 5 nights later, banners flapped in chill air atop the ramparts at Maidenpool. Lord Guncer's sunglass grimaced as he read the Raven's scroll. Tywin Lannister had sealed alliance with Balon Greyjoy. Ironborn longships raiding western reach coasts. Casterly refineries churned night and day to cast scorpion bolts and plate. Another raven bore tidings from Duskendale. Cell sails from Volantis sighted near Dragonstone waters, likely bearing mercenaries hungry for coin older than honor. In the small council, Lord Valerian slammed palm upon table. Baratheon fleet still smolders. We lack hulls to guard 2 coasts. Stannis remained unmoved. We rebuild the royal fleet at the Blackwater shipyards using timber from Storm's End forests. Valerion oversee. By spring, I want 30 war galleys seaworthy. Garland Tyrell stepped forward, parchment unrolled. Highgarden's mills can provide seasoned oak sooner, he offered. If your grace grants safe passage across the Mander. Granted, Stannis said, surprising him. Tyrion folded arms. Granting Reachman free river lanes risks Tywin raiders upriver. Tywin raids whatever lanes he pleases, Stannis answered. Better I trade grain for timber than let pride sink the realm. Maester Pylos coughed softly. A letter from the wall, your grace. Lord Commander writes of wildling host at Frostfangs numbering 20,000. Silence. Stannis' eyes narrowed. They will break upon the wall. Unless they climb it, Tyrion muttered, remembering ladders of ice and desperation. Stannis looked to Melisandre beside hearth. Have the fires shown more? She inclined her head. The flames whisper of snow-crowned shadows, a man with shield of dragonglass, a woman with a severed face sewn of wolfskin. But meanings shift like smoke. En many. Stannis accepted this without question. We ride north after first thaw. Until then, we build roads, restore order. Tyrion snorted. Thaw? North's rivers freeze by first moon of snow. We have little time. Then we ride sooner, Stannis said. Winter's first fingers crept down from the neck, frosting cattails along the trident with white lace. Small folk whispered that the long night quickened its pace whenever kings quarreled. Yet King's Landing found new order in measured edicts, thieving punished by labor rebuilding trebuchets, water barrels regulated, a census of orphans begun. Scribes in the Tower of the Hand found themselves drafting fewer warrants for execution, more contracts for bridge repairs. Sansa Stark found solace in the godswood beneath the pale weirwood eyes. No longer Cersei's plaything. She walked unguarded save a silent maid. She sang northern dirges that spoke of snow-soft hours, of hearth fires and stolen kisses. Sometimes Tommen joined her, clutching a wooden knight Davos had carved. They fed crumbs to blueback sparrows. Speaking of true knights and heroes, who never broke their oaths, in that garden whisper, hope stirred like winter roses budding before their time, yet spies perched beyond branches. Varys, the spider, glided through corridors in soft slippers, his shave-smooth head reflecting candle wicks. He served whatever king held throne, but his true master was realm itself, so he told himself. Now he sifted rumors. Of Tyrell men uneasy with red priests, of Melisandre's midnight forge vigils, of a letter intercepted bearing sigil of a three-headed dragon in red and black. Across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen had boarded ships at Qarth. Her dragons, though small, grew daily. Varys penned a note to Stannis. Your Grace, storms form on distant horizons. Best to reef sail before they strike. The mother of dragons has left the east. If she finds safe harbor in Dorne, your crown will rest on sand. He sealed it with wax, bearing spiders in print, and sent it via pageboy who never saw Varys' face. On moonless midnight, 3 weeks later, a hooded figure crept along the wharf near the chain tower. He scaled barnacle-slick pilings, slipped through a sally door, and padded across flagstones toward an iron cage where Cersei awaited transport to Casterly Rock. 2 drowsy guards snored against the bars. From his sleeve, the intruder drew a vial of pale amber, essence of nightshade. Smearing it beneath their nostrils, the guards slumped deeper. He drew back the bolt. Cersei rose from her straw pallet, eyes glinting like green gemstones in torch glow. Jaime, she whispered. He shook his hood. No, friend to the lion. She pressed close. Free me, and the lion will shower you in gold. Gold buys only graves now, he answered, voice rasping. Your son, he is the key. With Tommen you could rally Dawn's banners. Without him, your house dies. He slipped a parchment into her shackled hands, a map of tunnels beneath the city. Bell of the Second Watch, he said. Follow to the docks. A fishing dory waits. Sail north for Driftmark. From there, friends can guide you to the rock. Mensua. Cersei's pulse hammered at her wrists. How do I trust you? You don't, he said, stepping away. You trust vengeance. Then he vanished into shadow, leaving only the smell of salt and the promise of flight. But watchers watched watchers in Stannis City. One shadow detached from behind a timber pillar, Melisandre's red eyes following the hooded shape. She whispered a syllable of forgotten Valyrian. Ruby flared. Far above, a rook shifted on its perch, wings rustling. Its black eyes lit amber, and it took flight after the fugitive. In her cell, Cersei traced map lines trembling. Escape glimmered, yet doubt gnawed. If she fled without Tommen, she abandoned her last claim to Mother's power. If she took him, Stannis' vengeance would follow. She crumpled the map. But revenge could wait. She needed her son more than she needed freedom. Storm clouds bruised the sky at dawn, thunderheads rolling off the narrow sea. Lightning flash casting purple veins across towers. Stannis rode the rampart walk, cloak snapping, face upturned to wind. Rain broke in fat drops, sluicing down his scarred cheek like tears he would never shed. Melisandre emerged from the stair. A man sought the queen's release. She said above gust. Stannis' gaze sharpened. Who? He wore no sigil. She replied, a sellsword ghost. Yet R'hllor's fire marked his steps. He serves dragons across the sea. Stannis' jaw clenched. Daenerys. She courts Dornish hearts, Melisandre said. And Tywin's coffers. 2 sons competing cannot share the sky. One must eclipse. If she lands in Dorne, the south erupts. Stannis wiped rain from brow. Send ravens to Sunspear. Offer Prince Doran alliance. Marriage between Tommen and his youngest, Arianne's cousin, the little one. Promise autonomy. Darwin. Melisandre smiled. You trade the boy's claim for loyalty. Wise. Now you call me wise? Stannis muttered. I see you forging Lightbringer anew in choices, not steel. She answered, turning away. Stannis watched the storms for a long while, until his cloak clung heavy and thunder rolled like distant drums of war. Across leagues of gray water, Davos stepped onto Braavos quays under stone titan shadow. The sea bitch moored among sleek galleys flying forked blue banners of the Sea Lord. Braavos smelled of brine, coin, and secrets. Masked couriers escorted Davos and Salator through canals to the Iron Bank, a fortress of marble veined like bloodstone. Inside, candlelight glittered on iron bars stacked floor to ceiling, each bearing sigils of debtors across the known world. 3 thin men awaited behind a teak desk. The keyholders. Their faces betrayed no emotion. King Stannis Baratheon requests a line of credit, Davos began, voice echoing in vaulted chamber. He offers interest at 5% and rights to Casterly Rock's gold once subdued. The tallest keyholder steepled fingers. The rock stands unconquered since Age of Heroes. Then history grows overdue, Davos said. Consider. Lannisters default on debts to Mar and Lys. Their minds run thin. But Stannis wields the Iron Throne's taxes. Investment in him ensures repayment. The keyholders exchanged glacial glances. The tallest leaned forward. There is also matter of a Targaryen girl who seeks ships. She too offers interest, and dragons. Davos hid his flinch. Dragons cannot mint coins, nor pay wages. They consume. Then they conquer, the banker replied. Davos set both palms on polished desk. So will winter. Invest in dragonfire, and you risk ashes when snow quenches flame. Invest in Stannis, and you secure ledger rights to half a continent. Silence drew taut. At last the second keyholder dipped quill, scribbled on vellum. We will deliberate. Return on morrow's dawn. Salator, waiting outside, raised brow as Davos emerged. Well, they deliberate, Davos sighed. Better than refusal. The Lysine clapped his back. Come, onion friend. We find warm stew, cold wine, and soft pillow to dream of their purse. Now all. But Davos dreamed not of coin. He dreamed of Blackwater burning again. Flames green, then blue, then white like starbursts. He dreamed of a wall of ice cracking under dragon wings. And he dreamed of Stannis. Sword ablaze, standing alone against shadows that neither coin nor crown could bribe. At dusk the next day, the keyholders signed an agreement. 1 million golden dragons immediate, 2 million upon proof of Casterly Rock's fall. Interest, 7%. Davos sealed with wax. Heart heavy at interest, but lighter with possibility. As he strode into canal sunlight, a Braavosi courtesan, in feathered mask, pressed a folded note into his hand. Saladhor watched as Davos opened it. Inside, beware the pale mare. A ship sails for Dorne bearing silver hair and 3 burning children. Davos felt the ground sway though canals ran calm. He closed the note, eyes lifting toward sunset where a single dark-sailed cog slipped out the western channel. He whispered, 7, save us. South, in the Lemonwood Palace gardens of Sunspear, Prince Doran Martell read Stannis' proposal, while sand snakes lounged beneath pomegranate trees. News of dragons at sea reached his litter simultaneously. He weighed parchment against rumor, measured blood debt against future flame. When night fell, he summoned Maester Caliot. Write to the new king, he ordered, joints aching. Say that Dorne remembers Elia's screams and Arianne's tears. We will parley, but not without surety of justice for Robert's crimes and Lannister betrayals. And send riders to the stepstones. Find this dragon queen before lions sink their claws. Da. In the shadows beyond lattice screens, Nymeria's sand smiled like a cat poised to spring. North of the neck, Asha Greyjoy's longship Black Wind raided Flint's Finger, smoke rising behind as she sailed west. She read Tywin's letter again. Plunder the Reach, choke their grain, keep the stag tied to docks. Reward: gold and free pillage rights. Asha grinned. Kings always paid dear for chaos they could no longer command. Let the green boys burn fields. She would reap Reaver's songs and bloody legend. Far beyond them all, at the wall's frost-rimmed edge, Jon Snow strode atop battlements with torch guttering. Below, wildling fires dotted the forest, embers in a sea of black. Samwell Tarly huddled in cloak, breath pluming. I count 20 lines of fires, Jon said. Mance gathers strength. And beyond Mance, dead things, Sam whispered. Jon's hand rested on hilt of Longclaw. Stannis must answer soon. They turned southward where, in the distance, a faint smear of red glowed on horizon. Dragon's breath or dawn? None could say. Yet hope rode that light, perhaps carried by a king with a flaming sword, perhaps by a queen with scales and fire. Either would do, Jon thought, if they reached the wall before night swallowed all. In Blackwater Bay a fortnight later, the first hull of the rebuilt royal fleet slid down, greased timbers into swells. Christened Storm's Justice. Stannis watched from the quay, brow sheltering eyes against sunlight. The ship's prow bore carved stag antlers gilded to gleam like dawn. Carpenters cheered, drums thundered, children threw handfuls of salt to bless the keel. Tyrion approached, limping less these days. A fine hull, he said. Might split a kraken, if one dared venture so far south. Stannis answered without turning. Ships are tools, dwarf. Swords that sail. He folded arms. Your father writes. He will not bend, but he offers peace if I name him hand and return the queen untried. Tyrion's chuckle held no mirth. He offers his enemy a dagger and calls it olive branch. He sobered. Expect a hammer from the west soon. My father always follows a letter with steel. Let him. Stannis glanced skyward where gulls wheeled over charred spars. Hammer meets anvil. The realm will learn which breaks first. Thunder rumbled. Not from storm clouds but distant war drums echoing beyond horizon lines carved by ambition. The seas smelled of tar and danger. The winds carried tongues of rumor and prophecy. Yet in that moment, with the storm's justice rocking proud and new, Stannis allowed himself a thin sliver of triumph. The wheel of the world had turned, but its final revolution lay ahead. Carved by swords yet drawn, debts yet paid, and fires yet kindled beneath snow-haunted skies. And so, the tale marched onward, step by bloody step, toward dragons over Dorne, and a king upon ice, and a forge of souls, where light and shadow would decide the fate of all.